Welcome to the Mount Pleasant Magazine podcast, featuring discussions and interviews about the people, places, and events that make Mount Pleasant such a special place.
Hi, this is Roger Gaither, your host for the Mount Pleasant Magazine podcast. In this episode, Bill Macchio, publisher of Mount Pleasant Magazine, chats with the mayor of the town of Mount Pleasant, Will Haynie. Now, here are Bill and Will.
I am so honored today to have with us on Mount Pleasant Magazine podcast, Will Haynie. He's running for reelection, and we get a chance to do it up close and personal. I appreciate you being here, Will.
Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate it. For years and years, you have really captured the spirit of life in Mount Pleasant, and I appreciate that. How long have you been doing this? It's over 30, isn't it? About 30 years?
Yeah, because we had a magazine called East Cooper Magazine that morphed into Mount Pleasant Magazine. But you know, Will, since our town's grown so much, these elections are more important than ever. So before I really get into some issues, may I ask you something personal? Is that okay?
Yes.
That was funny, Will. But what really inspired you the first time to run for mayor? What really got to you that you wanted to do that?
I'll take it back to 2015 when I first ran for council. I had a column in the Moultrie News. I had been an opinion columnist for two newspapers in North Carolina and the sailing columnist for the Post and Courier. And then I had an opinion column in the Moultrie News. And when these growth issues were getting big, especially the parking garage on Shem Creek and this type thing that just changed the look and feel of our town, my wife, Suzette, who taught at Jenny Moore for many years, told me one time, she said, have you ever thought about coming out from behind the keyboard and offering yourself for public office? And I thought, that was either an inspiration or a challenge. I'm not sure which. But I ran for council in 2015, and I just got the feeling that it was going to take a change of leadership at mayor to really accomplish the things we need to control growth, to try to fix the traffic issues, which is a long-term project, as everybody knows, and keep the quality of life in Mount Pleasant as we know it. So as a council member, I decided I was gonna run for mayor. And it was a midterm thing for me. If I had lost that race, I would still be on council. I would still have had 4 years on council. So I decided to do it, learned a lot from the 15 campaign for council, applied that to the run for mayor, and got about 68% of the vote, and have been honored to serve ever since.
Does that mean behind every great man, there's a great woman?
Greatness aside, it's the love and inspiration and the closeness that you feel. And I know all the families in that part of Mount Pleasant that go to Jenny Moore have known Suzette for years. She was a very highly requested teacher there. And she loves our community, and she loves it enough to, this is technically a part-time job, but ask my wife if this job is part-time, not if you do it right. I always said when I was running before, the job may be described as part-time, but leadership is full-time.
There's so many things going on right now in Mount Pleasant because of the growth, the traffic, everything you're saying. But what would you say the most important issues are right now in Mount Pleasant that you plan to wrap your mind around and solve some challenges if reelected?
Sure. I ran for council and I ran for mayor on controlling growth, which we have done. We have limited residential growth to 2% per year. It used to be unlimited. We will now only issue about 750 building permits. I wouldn't mind if that number was lower, and I don't think most of our residents would. Maybe as council, as we get some new council members, we can do that. Protecting our quality of life. I stood behind the plastics ordinance, which did not ban all plastic bags. As you know, you can get the reusable kinds. But we have an irreplaceable ecosystem around here that feeds that ocean that we all love. But right now, an issue, and those are two that I ran on, and two that I'm proud of my record. I don't run away from my record on those. But we are in a life and death issue now, and that's the COVID-19 pandemic. Nobody foresaw that, in 2017. And there are no elected officials who had dealt with a pandemic before we got into this one in March of 2020. So the life and death issues will always come first. And that includes public safety. And that includes getting our first responders pay to where it needs to be, which we were in the process of doing when everything had to get put on hold because we had no idea what our budget was going to look like. Nobody ever missed a paycheck. Nobody had a furlough in the town of Mount Pleasant. Now we're going to bump those salaries up to where they ought to be.
Everyone's talking about real estate. The conversation continues with Voice for Real Estate podcast. Listen and learn from the experts who call the Carolinas home. Podcast advertising gives your business a voice of authority. Be heard. Advertise on this podcast. Visit voiceforrealestate.com.
You're listening to the Mount Pleasant Magazine podcast.
I was at the town council meeting when a lot of people got up and talked about the first responders. Not only is it a much needed raise, but it's a very popular. First responders need to be taken care of the best we can take care of them.
Right. I agree. And I don't want anybody to get the impression that there was a request that was denied by the elected officials at all. That's why we paid so much money for this study. And that's why we're having this study done from 2019, fast forward to 2021, and it will come to us to vote on in October. And I've let our first responders know I stand behind that and we will get those raised.
The COVID spike, you were talking about COVID a little earlier. How has that affected the way you're governing and how has it affected our community?
Affecting our community in that we are seeing a spike now. Yesterday, we heard that one of our elementary schools suddenly has to close and go to virtual. That's not saying, hey, we're going to do this on this date. That's saying starting tomorrow, do not come to school and we'll get you, your e-learning packets and all of that. Being married to a career school teacher, I know how tough that is. And I know how that puts our children behind. So, first of all, there's the public health issue. There's the life and death matter. Second, there's the educational effects of that. And third, and this doesn't trivialize it at all, but this is also an economic issue because all of those parents have to stay home with those children now. And that puts a stress on the workplace and puts a stress on the economy. So, we are seeing a spike. I spoke with the head of East Cooper Hospital yesterday. We are at East Cooper, we're below the inpatient admitted level and the ICU and ventilated level. We were at the spike of last summer. It's not at that level yet, but it is higher than it has been since the spike a year ago. Roper, has a big presence in Mount Pleasant. They put out their figures yesterday, as does the medical university, and they have put theirs out. The lesson learned in all of this is that those who got the vaccination are much better off and much less likely to spread it. And I'm very proud that as of the end of May, even, Mount Pleasant was around 65% vaccinated if you take out the 12 and under who weren't eligible. We made national news with our collaborative effort of vaccinating when I called Chick-fil-A to come help us get the traffic through. So Mount Pleasant's been a leader in that, but let's don't stop now. If you're not vaccinated, get that vaccine.
If I may give a little plug, we're having a health and wellness expo in November at the Omar Temple, brought to you by Health Links magazine.
Yep.
And we're giving free COVID shots there. When I was at that same town council meeting, there was a lot going on regarding this Phillips community.
Yes.
And can you elaborate on that? And because that's part of our growth, because we have to maintain that because that's our heritage. What are we doing to make sure that happens? Let's
be clear. This is not the Highway 41 Phillips community issue. This is the historic district designation. And there was a tract of land out there that has been sold. And the new buyers asked to annex into Mount Pleasant, which in and of itself is usually not a problem. It's what they want for zoning. And that's where if you get zoning and you upzone it to where you can develop it more intensely than the settlement community it's in, that's when we start eviscerating our settlement community. So the town of Mount Pleasant has a zoning called community conservation. This is not natural conservation. This is to conserve the character of all of our settlement communities. Our comprehensive plan calls for certain tracts. If they choose to come into the town, and we've got thousands of people that have moved here recently. In South Carolina, a municipality cannot reach out and say, we are annexing you. we have to respond to requests to annex in. That's the only way it works in South Carolina.
Okay.
So these buyers wanted to annex in, and they wanted to become part of the plan development agreement for Park West. And we said, no way that's happening. We're not expanding Park West. It has defined boundaries. The only reason first reading to annex it passed was it would fall under our comprehensive plan. It would become community conservation and would only reflect the Phillips community. So at that time, the county had not passed its historic district designation. So we deferred that vote. They have since passed it. So now there is really no need to annex it into the town of Mount Pleasant. We do not make money off annexations. Trust me, we lose money on providing all of those services. So I, for one, and I don't speak for all of council will have a vote. But at our meeting on the 15th, it will come up and for second reading. And I will say there's no reason to annex this. The Phillips community doesn't want this 19-acre tract to be in the town of Mount Pleasant when a lot of Phillips, the majority of Phillips, is not. So
do you think the other town council members will support that vision?
Yeah, I think so. I can say this, if it does get voted to be annexed, you won't see any change. It's not going to be annexed to be developed intensely. I think what the Phillips community wants is, now that they are a defined historic district, they don't want to have piecemeal government. And, we don't either. Piecemeal government is hard. The other thing I want to say is I proudly supported the Settlement Community Task Force that Councilmember G.M. Whitley proposed. And that is our outreach. And we have appointees from all of the settlement communities to talk with the town of Mount Pleasant of how we can get along better, how we could inspire voluntary annexation if they knew we were going to preserve their community. And we have got decades, maybe centuries of mistrust and exclusion to overcome. But once that dialogue has started, which it has, we're on the right track.
Well, that was one of my questions moving forward. You basically answered that with the settlement communities. That's a really important part of Mount Pleasant, is it not?
Absolutely. And that's why we have a sweetgrass basket overlay district to protect that. That's why tomorrow I'm meeting with 2 leaders of our settlement communities to talk about an issue involving one. You can ask George Freeman, Lewis Jefferson, John Wright, just about anybody who's involved in a settlement community. Cheryl German with the Old Village community. They have my ear. I have a relationship with them, and I'll meet with them anytime. It is part of our heritage, and that story needs to be told more.
Beyond governing,
yes.
What do you do? What do you do for the town? I mean, like, what would you and Suzette, what would you and your wife do to support the town and different things like that?
That's a great question. One of the biggest and most meaningful is our involvement with Nancy Shipman and Wake Up Carolina. Last night, we had the National Day of Remembrance, and it was declared a day of remembrance for overdose victims in the town of Mount Pleasant. We gathered, if you haven't seen the pictures, that rotunda of our town hall looks beautiful when it's lit up, either in patriotic colors or, like last night, the purple for remembrance. 259 people in our region, in our area, died last year of an accidental overdose due to opioids. I asked Siri what the 259th day of 2021 is. Bill, that is September the 16th. So we lose a person every day of the year in our region from January 1 till September the 16th. And those numbers are up because of that. So we got the Narcan training. It's a nasal spray that will reverse the effects of an opioid. We were trained in that, what the law is about that, how you save somebody's life. The Charleston Center trains and treats people for that. Our police department is a prime mover in that. They are one of the leaders in the state. So Suzette and I are very involved in that. And when I spoke last night, we have members of our immediate family who are in recovery. Our lives have been touched by these issues. And so we don't try to hide that. It's not our personal story to tell. It's our family members to tell. And me being a public official, that kind of could drag them into the spotlight. But that is one. Another that I'm very, very proud of was back in December, the stress that was on the people in our retirement communities, the workers and the residents who have been isolated for years, our healthcare workers and our hospitality workers who were way behind in their income and everything. We pulled together Operation COVID Christmas. No town assets, no town staff. I just got on the phone and got people like Mickey Bask with Feed the Need. And it involved our 2 big hospitals, our 14 retirement centers, East Cooper Community Outreach, Meals on Wheels, Shifa Clinic, the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce, and I hope I'm not leaving anybody out. The choir from my church at St. Andrews. We went Christmas caroling. We provided meals. We provided Christmas music. We visited the nursing homes. And I love this town. I love the spirit of this town. And I will never leave, the leadership to just governing and passing ordinances and things like that. I think you have to get out there and care for the heart of your community.
Will, that's what I wanted to elaborate on. That's people talk about the growth, and we all know it's growing, but there's so many things when you're in the field, when you're talking to people, and the things like you're talking about. That's true community. That's true community, and you don't see that in a big city. You see stuff like that in a town. Yeah, and preserving that is really, really important. Let me ask you a kind of a hard hitting question here. What's the biggest difference between you and your opponent right now? And please talk I know you're a politician. I know you got to talk about talk to us. Talk to us, Will. What is the biggest difference?
Sure. First of all, I think that the voters want to know how we address the issues of the town of Mount Pleasant, how we address the issues that are affecting them. And to me, the focus of my campaign, the focus of the comparison between me and anybody else that runs for mayor is how have you addressed these issues? How have you shown leadership in these issues? How have you listened to the people to know what their big issues are? I think I've demonstrated that over 4 years. I was told by Walter Brown III, who lives in the settlement community part of the old village, that I'm the most approachable mayor he has ever known. I've demonstrated that. My issue is not with my opponents. My issue is not with what they think or how I want them to be perceived. My issue is the issues of this town, which is keeping a control on growth, protecting our quality of life, protecting our environment, and solving our traffic issues, which we know is years long. I would be a fool and a liar if I sat here and said in 4 years of mayor, I fixed our traffic issues. No, I fixed some of the problems, and that was uncontrolled growth. And now we've got to fix the infrastructure and make the improvements that we need to do. And that's the difference.
What would be, let's move forward and say let's just assume you're going to be reelected.
Right.
What would be the number one thing you would focus on? Because now you know what the issues are, because you've been mayor for 4 years now. And then before that, you were town council. What's the number one thing we need to take care of as a community?
Well, as things are at this moment, on September 1st of 2021, we still have a life and death issue out there of COVID-19. And so you can't take your eye off that ball, because we have people on ventilators in our community right now as we speak. And because of COVID, there are restrictions on family members being able to see them. That is tough. That hurts my heart as the mayor of this community. Once we get through this pandemic, and we will, and we'll do it as a community, we have to keep our eye on the ball of what I said in 2018, in January of 2018, after having been elected in November at my State of the Town address, is we have to protect what is special about Mount Pleasant. We have to plan for the future, and that means planning roads, planning traffic, and all of that. And then we have to restore. We have to restore the sense of community. We have to restore the responsive government that listens to the people. When I first got on council, our council chambers were full of people, and they were angry and they were mad, and it was heated, and you could feel it. When we passed our comprehensive plan last year, after years of work, and which sets the vision for this town, how much we will grow, what we will look like, there was nobody there in opposition. And I'm very proud of that. That was a town effort. That wasn't me. I am part of that movement. I'm not responsible for that movement. I'm part of it. We have shepherded that movement. We have gotten people elected to council that reflect that. So I agree in Andy Stanley's principle of the path. You don't fix something once and you're done. We are on the path to preserving Mount Pleasant, to restoring, things like tree canopies and vegetated buffers and the things that make Mount Pleasant look like Mount Pleasant. And we're on the path of planning. We've lowered building heights. We have taken high density areas out of our comprehensive plan. And that's the path we need to stay on. And that's what I will focus on. I'm going to keep my eye on the ball that the people sent me here to do.
You're right, Mr. Mayor. When before your term and you were part of that council, there was a lot of hostility in that room. And There was a lot of anger from the people that would visit the chambers and stuff. And that is not that people aren't emotional and not that people have their own agendas, but it's far less hostile than it was when you first became mayor.
Exactly. And I appreciate that. And we worked on that. And, we have the quote, weak mayor form of government, which people who move here are shocked to find out the mayor does not run the town on a daily basis. And the staff does not report to the mayor and that type thing. Reports to council. We have the council form of government. But one thing you do as mayor is you pick committee heads. And I knew that GM Whitley was the right council member to shepherd the comprehensive plan through the building heights changes that we did. There are only some areas where we need 80-foot buildings in Mount Pleasant, and where people have asked for variances on it for 80 feet. I voted against that. But she did a great job on that. She did a great job on the comprehensive plan and other appointments that I made.
She's a good council member.
Yes, I'm very proud of those. And I think that process and putting people as chairs of the committees is one of the best things I've done.
Congratulations on rerunning again, but I've got a very important question here. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
What do you like most about Mount Pleasant Magazine?
About the magazine? Oh, that's easy. You go so far, but it is not a style and status magazine. It could so easily be. And you look around at other places and you go, it's so surfacey. There's nothing important. You get to the hearts of the matter. You get into things about how people live and how people feel and tell their story. And, there's an old saying, Bill, I've been a commercial writer too, professional writer. Nothing tells like a story. You tell the story. And that's
obviously being the mayor and you saying those kind of words is special to my heart. You know that. But the fact is, you're part of the industry I represent. This is your craft as well. So those statements even mean more to me. Hey, thanks for being here on Mount Pleasant Podcast. And thanks for reading the magazine, and good luck in your endeavor to be once again the mayor of Mount Pleasant.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Mount Pleasant.
Thanks for spending your time with the Mount Pleasant Magazine podcast. Your community, your podcast. Listen to past and future episodes at mountpleasantpodcast.com.